A public-private partnership is a government service or private business venture which is funded and operated through a partnership of government and one or more private sector companies. These schemes involve a contract between a public sector authority and a private party, in which the private party provides a public service or project and assumes substantial financial, technical, and operational risk in the project. Because the private company is usually the one taking the risk, it is expected that they will be the beneficiaries of the profits. In well-structured societies, these partnerships have been the building blocks for great infrastructural development. It is a relatively new concept to Guyana, and the ones entered into by the previous administration were issued with red flags since they allegedly reeked of corruption. Presidential Advisor on Sustainable Development, Professor Clive Thomas, is saying this is so because the previous regime entered into these agreements contrary to the norm.
But in the private-public partnerships that we have in Guyana, what happens? The government manipulates it, has manipulated it in the past. So the private capital doesn't take the risk, but it appropriates the benefits. And the public capital takes the risk, but stands last in the queue for getting the benefits. So it's a complete inversion of the reality.
This, he said, is evidenced in the present contentions of the bridge company. The company is adamant that it stands to lose financially should it lower bridge tolls to suit the government. Additionally, the bridge company requested that the new administration honor the company's request to the previous administration to increase fares by 55%. And then subsidize the company so it can lower the fares. This decision by the bridge company is seen as foolhardy, and the reason was explained by the professor.
Private capital should go in there. It takes a risk that they can make money. That's why you buy the shares. But you can't turn around and say, well, I can't make money, so bail me out, as some people are suggesting in the press. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Capital takes a risk, and that is why it gets profits.
Professor Thomas noted that this is his main objection to the present structure of the Berbice Bridge Agreement. He said it is not uncommon for the private partners to try to abuse the state in an attempt to secure more monies. Professor Thomas stressed that in these arrangements, public accountability should be the priority and advised on a step that should have been implemented, which will aid transparency.
I would not trust any accounting figure given to me by a private body unless there's some independent verification of it. So I feel the traffic across the bridge and all these things should be monitored so that we know that the traffic is what they say it is. So I would not have entered into this agreement if I were advising.
He posited that this would have readily provided answers to the bridge's claims of operating at a loss. The economist explained that previous partnership agreements by the previous government were flawed in terms of negotiation, where too much leeway was given to the private investors at the expense of taxpayers. Professor Thomas stated that while the onus is on the bridge company to disclose the contents of that now guarded contractual agreement, the government should be more insistent.
I don't think it's necessary for the bridge to do it. I think the government should insist. It should have some right to disclosure, some right to make industries accountable. There should be some legislation that cannot allow companies to hide behind that legislation and give out what might be misleading information.
Professor Thomas relayed that in his view, the previous administration failed to not only take the interests of all Guyanese at heart in their arrangements, but failed themselves in the negotiations. He noted, while there are no set models to follow, the negotiations should always reflect a government's interest in its people. For HGP Nightly News, Kingsley Bryan.